Gents, it's been a year since Butler. Can you believe it? An entire year.
It's been a wild year.
Yeah.
When Trump was nearly assassinated. And then we spent a month going,
Should have been.
who did it? Crooks did it. But how did he do it? Did he do it alone? No, he didn't. And we eventually settled on the whole internet seemed, many people were sleuthing trying to find that second shooter. Never did satisfactorily, but
I did.
you did.
Yeah.
Well, we went through a few iterations, but I think we did a show then in August, about a month, 6 weeks later. And we had it. We think we nailed it. But the curious thing is Trump then becomes president and it becomes a non-issue. I mean, Jesus Christ. You know, the guy's just been assassinated.
Par for the course, though, in America, right?
Yeah.
In the Western world, at least, that's how the Americans roll. Every now and again, we need a good presidential assassination just to stir things up, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Keep people happy.
That's what it takes.
They can't go to bed without having one of their presidents assassinated every now and again. I can't go to sleep.
And then it's business as usual. Election takes place. Trump wins. He's the president.
Yeah, well, except Trump, had an amazing conversion, obviously, which you can understand, if you're as stupid as Trump. Not that he's particularly stupid, but he's just if you're as naive and unaware as the average person, then you're going to. It's quite possible that you'll believe that Jesus or God or someone saved you, from in that kind of situation where it's technically you should have died, but some kind of divine inspiration or divine intervention.
He did say
caused you to.
He said that in his speech.
Yeah.
At his acceptance rally at the RNC.
So it just kind of turbocharged him in a certain sense, give him that extra bit of, of course he'd wonder why, but you wonder why he was saved. Why did you save me? Or Yahweh, why did you save me? Or whoever his God is. And dollar bill, why did you save me? The almighty greenback, why did you save me? Obviously it's to do the work that he was tasked, that he had already decided to do, because that's the logical narrative. Like, you have an agenda, you're trying to do something, you're getting a lot of pushback, the people are pushing back against you, try and kill you. God saves you. Clearly God is saving you to continue doing the work that you were doing,
Mm-hmm.
So just give him a bit of extra oomph, personally, and his commitment, to making America great again. But what's interesting is that it was pretty obvious, if you think about it, and I haven't actually seen anybody or heard anybody mention this, but it's pretty obvious that the plan was to assassinate Trump and then blame the Iranians. The FBI came out in the immediate aftermath of Butler in a kind of like sideline story type thing, because obviously it wasn't the big news, whatever, but for some reason they let it out that they had been working on a investigation for the previous few weeks into an Iranian plot to assassinate Trump. But of course, and Crooks wasn't involved in it and all that kind of stuff. But they just wanted to let people know that, because they wanted to make some hay out of it, basically, because they put in a lot of work. I think I talked about this last week. They put in a lot of work into it, and now they wanted to release it because the plan was still to attack Iran, was still there. Obviously, it just had been subverted by Trump's miraculous survival. But can you imagine the kind of attack or the political capital that would have been available by way of public outrage if Trump had actually been assassinated, and then they had done, which they like almost certain that they were going to do, was release all this information about how Crooks was associated with an Iranian Iranian gang and all that kind of stuff. Because the reason they didn't do that, they had that all set up, but the reason they didn't do it is because Trump's still alive. So you didn't have the political capital anymore. But if you had that political capital of Trump having had his head blown off basically on camera, massive MAGA outrage, right? And
but it still would have been directed in the right direction.
What?
The MAGA movement. There's a wide majority. I don't know if I would say a wide majority, but there would have been not a small number of people who were in the MAGA movement who would not have gone along with whatever narrative they spun about Iran being behind it. And I'm trying to remember who, if anyone, put the pieces together at the time about, they did the messaging, the leak of, well, we were tracking Iran, and there was a plot to kill the president. I can't imagine we were the only ones at the time to draw the obvious conclusion that
I didn't see anybody. I don't know. I didn't see anybody. I mean, it's so obvious in the broad scheme of things. Like you're going back to Wesley Clark and his 7 countries in 5 years and all this kind of stuff, and they'd done them all, and then after the fact proof in the sense of what happened over the past month or so with the attack in Iran stuff. It obviously, and it fits into it fit right into the same scenario of that we've seen playing out with Israel, like basically taking out Iranian proxies in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. Obviously Palestine, Hamas, Lebanon, Syria, and Iran's next. Yeah. That's been a plan for a very long time. They needed political capital to launch a major attack on Iran, and killing Trump was a 2-for-1 kind of thing. You would get the political capital, and you would also remove Trump. You would have Kamala or whoever as his replacement, who would have fully gone along with it. I mean, it's obviously speculation, but I don't. I would. You say that a lot of people would. The MAGA supporters, because they're already on Trump as a kind of like no war president and stuff. But like when he gets taken out, and they're only in the immediate aftermath, the outpouring of outrage and stuff, and in the immediate aftermath, and then the government or the state, deep state, whatever, drops this Iran did it on them. I don't think you're going to have many people, MAGA or not, saying no, don't attack Iran. Maybe you have more faith in MAGA people and stuff, but I think they'll all just revert to type, and it's like it would be 9/11. 9/11 part 2, 9/11 was the big shock and awe, spectacular event that caused, every American, let's say, by and large, to fully support bombing the shit out of those dirty Arabs who just did this,
I'm thinking specifically of people like Ian Carroll, like the Hodge twins, who within the MAGA movement and also have been referencing like the PNAC document, as well as other people who have come out and said like this was the plan. It was always to go after Iran, and would have put the 2 and 2 together.
But I think in that context, there would have been voices in the wilderness. You know what I mean?
Well, that's a different question, because like I don't doubt for one second that would have been what the company play would have, like, they would have gone with it. Yeah. That was what they would have gone with. The question is how much support it would have actually had within the population. And I just don't think it's like with all the things that they do, they always seem to wake up a small percentage. Mm-hmm. And that's just been building over the years. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, that suggests, maybe you're looking at only 20%, but
he's skeptical.
But here's
a context situation. So it's not 2003. It's different now. People have actually elected once and arguably twice. Once was rejected by fuzzy means a president who has gone on and on about the wasteful wars, the lies that got us into Iraq. So that's a population that's in tune with, I've been deceived, I don't trust the fucking media. You know what I mean? Media distrust is so low that, like, now here's one idea. Maybe upstairs said, actually, get him to turn his head, divine intervention, because they knew that when the system, whatever, knew that when they went with that, it wasn't going to work.
Who got him to change his head?
It's nuked. The plan is.
We can get Trump to turn his head.
How do I say this? It wouldn't have worked. What if it just would have completely backfired?
At the last minute, did he say that? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Anyway. Okay. It's something to keep in mind that the landscape's changed.
But that's what you're saying is different from what he's saying. That the landscape was really different. It mightn't have been the actual groundswell of support for it type thing. But I think if you take out our dear leader, basically, then, and given that probably a large majority of people voted for him, and then it's blamed on Iran, and the big majority of American people are not, including MAGA supporters and stuff, leaving aside people like Ian Carroll who are a bit clued in and stuff, but the vast majority of people are still, you see them on Twitter today being as stupid as they've always been. You know what I mean? They're ignorant of the broader geopolitical context in which all of this is happening. They're completely oblivious to that. So they don't really understand what's happening, and I don't think enough of them would have had the wherewithal in that moment to push back and say, they were happy that he killed Soleimani, for example. Nobody complained about him killing Soleimani, which on paper could have started what was a war starting kind of thing, a war starting move, but didn't happen that way. But even the fact that didn't happen should have allowed people to try and understand, or help them understand the way things actually work behind the scenes, But none of them are that aware, none of them have that perspective, I think, and. But anyway, I think the plan was to go ahead and, okay, we can argue over, what percent of the population would have supported or wouldn't have supported some kind of an attack on Iran, but they would have had full justification for an attack on Iran. I mean, that's the best justification you can get ever, is when you assassinate the head of state of assassinate an American president, then you've got everybody behind you, at least at the political level, and there's nobody's going to turn around and say this is not something we should do, especially since the vast majority of them all believe then, believe now, and believed long before it, that they, and I mean here Congress and the Senate and stuff, the vast majority of them have all been supportive and gunning for an attack on Iran and dealing with Iran, taking Iran out for a very long time. So I think it would have happened, and whether or not, what number of voices or the extent of the voices who were against it, I think they would have been drowned out.
Definitely in the beginning. My question, I guess, remains, because it's like COVID happened and there was just, the groundswell was to go along with it because it was terrible and we needed to protect Granny. But then as it went on, more and more people woke up to the fact that it's not what we were told. And so it
took a while though.
Yeah, no, for sure. But the thing is that it did wake up a number of people who have since gone on to learn quite a fair amount. Yeah. And so that's why I think, maybe it would be tapping in, those people would be less susceptible to that kind of thing happening again.
I think it would be very hard. I mean, that's like COVID. The example of COVID is something that's dropped on you, and people they don't have any skin in the game in a certain sense. It's like, this is dropped on us by the evil powers that be. They're forcing us to stay in our houses and not see Granny and stuff like that. And this is bullshit. So people, quickly, or relatively quickly, some people started to rebel against that. And Trump campaigned on no more wars, and 9/11 was the last time that something that big was used and was needed in order to launch the series of wars that constituted the war on terror since 9/11. So Trump and the continuation of those wars long past 9/11 the legs on 9/11 had run out, and that's what people were unhappy about all the stuff that happened in the later 20 years. Since then, people were getting, disenchanted, let's say, with it because there's no justification for it. But that's why I think the plan was to assassinate Trump, because that provides massive justification for continuation. It's a boost. It's an injection of adrenaline into the war party, the American war party. And I can't really think of anything bigger or more dramatic to do, other than a 9/11, let's say. But in that context last year, given the previous 8 years of what had gone on with Trump, the rise of Trump and the rise of, populism and MAGA, the MAGA movement and all that kind of stuff, and the prestige that he had amongst the people and all that kind of stuff, to take him out. I suppose what it comes down to is you're asking some percentage, and sure it would have been some percentage, but what percentage of the American people would have in that moment have been able to say, no, this is the deep staters who've been trying to take Trump out all along, compared with a massive media, a massive media campaign.
So you
showing the people that Iran did this, and that was because of Soleimani and all the justification for it. And you're asking people in that context to go, hang on a minute, I'm smarter than this.
Yeah.
This was the deep state. And so but then the question is, what do they do in that situation? What do they have a revolution and overthrow the government?
You've got general media skepticism in the scale, but then you put back on the scale the total investment in Trump, which we suspect is actually 80% of the electorate at that time.
Yeah.
I mean,
it comes down to the question of who killed him. So and asking people to really believe that this was, in the face of evidence provided by the FBI, provided by whoever in the media bombarding them with the information, that no, all of that's bullshit, that's all a setup, it has nothing to do with Iran, this was you guys, you killed him. But then what do people, what happens in that situation? What do you do? I mean, you have to, that anger and frustration, if enough people believe that, where does that go? You'd have to have but you'd have to have a January 6th, a real January 6th.
No, seriously. And I don't think it would have been anything, nothing good would have come out from it, because it would have basically put people into that situation, which is why I think it wasn't, because if they want something to happen, they're going to make it happen. They're basically not going to give it an out. But somehow they had an out here. Trump had an out.
What do you mean he had an out?
The second shooter wasn't there to pick off Trump, for example.
Well, what is this? How does that feed into what we're talking about here?
Because it just doesn't seem to me like it was as good a plan as they could have done it, which suggests to me that maybe the plan was in motion, so there was no way of calling it off. But at the same time, what they didn't do was, I guess, give it more legs.
By what?
Trump would be dead, but for turning his head.
Yeah.
I mean, they nicked the ear.
Yeah.
That's fucking close. That's pretty much guaranteed. He's dead. But for a really unusual quirk.
Here you're talking about just pure luck or pure chance or divine intervention, which a lot of people believe, whatever. But the bottom line is it went south for those people. They weren't able to achieve what they wanted to achieve, which was have Trump's head explode JFK style on live TV in front of millions of people. And then there was people even talked at the time about, Trump even talked about it at the time at the actual Butler rally just before they tried to kill him, that he was amazed by how much of the media were there, and he was calling out all the media when most, like CNN and all the MSNBC, they were all there, where they hadn't been at most of his other rallies, you know what I mean? But they all were set there with cameras trained on him, and that gets into the extent of the manipulation of the people who tried to assassinate him, basically, that they have pretty much full control over. They can put media, have CNN and MSNBC at a rally where Trump is going to be assassinated, when otherwise they wouldn't be. but they're there because he's going to be assassinated. Not that they know he's going to be assassinated, but they just they got a message. Yeah, I think we should go to this rally in particular today. But I think the problem was that Trump was a problem for them, as we know from the previous 8 years, and particularly his first administration. It was a problem the way they went after him. They didn't want him in power. They probably stole the 2020 election and got Biden in, and made a lot of moves, as Trump keeps repeating, Ukraine and every other conflict that has happened or that has boiled over during Biden's term. That would never have happened if Trump had been president. And then with it looking like they weren't going to be able to stop him having a second term starting this year, they decided to get a 2-for-1, which was assassinate him, get him out of the way, and get justification for launching an attack on Iran, which has been their plan for a very long time.
And our mistake this time last year was going, oh my God, this completely sabotages their plans, because he survived. I mean, they tried again with that guy,
Ruth,
tied with Ukraine, but whatever, incidentally, that could easily have been pinned on Iran too. Again, busted. A woman saw the guy, reported it. He's chased down the freeway.
It's always hard to do the second time. Yeah.
It's always, and then there was a third incident, but that was harder still, and it went even less.
Yeah,
progressed even less. That's 3 attempts in this, a couple of months. So they tried, and then they stop, obviously, because it goes ahead, and the election is more or less as normal. Was to tie it in then with what has happened.
No, what happened is that they attacked. Trump attacked Iran.
Okay, is he doing that because he's understanding now that this has some understanding that this is on the agenda? It must be done, but he's trying to control the process or minimize it, something like that.
There's no choice basically in the matter, and I mean he's got no choice, and also there's. Geopolitically, it's necessary for him to do it. He understands that it's in his interest to do it as well, to take out Iran, basically.
Do you think he's figured that out, or he's been read into something explicit, like
probably
Geopolitics 101?
Yeah, somebody sat him down and said, look, here's what's going on, or progressively, brought him along and made him understand that, assuming he wasn't aware of that, which I don't think he was. I don't think he's aware of an awful lot of things. He is. It's hard to say with Trump, obviously, but he tends to be instinctive in his approaches to things. He doesn't necessarily think long about stuff and study books and study history and all that kind of stuff. He does his blink approach to but, what he does understand intuitively is economics and business, right? And so he's a businessman, so he's running America like a business. But that you can't dissociate that from geopolitics, and because they're intricately tied together, right?
He has a long track record of talking about the economics of geopolitics.
Yeah, but that's what I mean.
Bitching about Japan in the 80s and how they're screwing us over, and tariffs and manufacturing jobs, bring them home.
Yeah,
he's been on that shtick for 4 decades.
And the Middle East and the necessity of America keeping maintaining control over the Middle East. And
his
not
first
falling.
trip, when he was first elected, was to Saudi Arabia.
Right,
he understands that.
Right, so he's faced with the idea of, look, we've done these other countries, and this, you mightn't like the way we've gone about. The Israelis have gone about it, or the Israelis / deep staters in the US have gone about it, but this needs to be done. And Trump's just trying to pander to, his base at the same time, because he's the no war president. So he's in a very difficult position where he has to have some kind of a war or some kind of a use of America's military might because America's
the system.
Yeah, but he can't do away with America's military prowess or the use of American military.
Yeah.
In order to make America great again. He can't do away with that completely. He can't be the no. This is where people are like, oh, you're going to be the no war president. They don't understand that America is the global hegemon, has been for 100 years because of its military. If you take its military away, it's no longer the hegemon. It's very simple. You can't have an America not using its military to achieve the thing. Or you can't have America not using its military to maintain the thing, i.e. its hegemony, that it used its military to achieve. There's no other way to
Yeah.
do it. That's how you got there.
Yeah.
It's not American entrepreneurial acumen or anything like that. It's American military might that put America in the position it is in today and has been in, and maintains it that way. And Trump understands that, and he understands that's why he was talking about.
He now understands that.
Yeah.
But in 2017, he was like, why do we have so many troops in South Korea?
Yeah.
Why don't we just take them home and we'll save the cost and invest in something else?
He was a super noob. Like,
what's his name? Mad Dog Mattis in the Pentagon was like, oh my God. Come here, sit down. Let's have a talk.
Yeah.
I don't think it worked. It took a while.
Yeah. So, and it's like the military is Trump understands this, that part of the reason that America was on the back foot is because of the rise of like other peer competitors, Russia, China, for example, and their military, the growth of their military capabilities, etc. And the world is starting to look at other countries, the rest of the world is starting to look at the world order and say, well, is it America has basically been the empire that we all tipped our hat to for so long because of its military prowess. But these other countries now are pushing back and suggesting that they could maybe hold their own. So maybe we can, so it's faith in America as the global police, right? Team America. Faith in that was waning. So how do you get that back? Well, one way is to have a show of force. And show that
and obliterate, in quotes.
Obliterate things, talk about it at least, So Trump is more about talking things up, and through talking it up, you create the reality, and hopefully you don't actually have to do
perception,
the obliterating.
Yeah. And hope that the opponent gets the point.
Yeah. And
although maybe this is somewhere else down the show, but there's satellite footage I've seen of before and after of the US base in Qatar.
There was one thing I saw.
They smacked their giant radome.
Yeah.
The white thing that's the keynote for picking up intel signals all over. It's gone. They hit that.
Yeah.
Trump's like, they hit nothing.
I saw that and I was wondering.
Hit nothing.
I saw that and I was wondering, that's pretty precise for an Iranian missile. But I wonder if it wasn't photoshopped or something. Anyway, who knows? But this is, there's a grand strategy at play here, and if people don't understand everything that's happening in the context of understanding that grand strategy, then they're going to be stuck complaining and fighting over why isn't Trump doing this and why is Trump doing that, why isn't he or isn't he doing this, that, or the other, and he promised this and he promised that, blah, blah. But it's kind of like a kid, and I think it's a reasonable analogy to present a lot of people as children vis-a-vis their governments and how the world actually works. It's kind of like a kid who, say parents are going through a divorce or something like that, and the kid's upset, and the mommy or the daddy says to the kid, don't worry, little Johnny, everything will be okay. Obviously not going to explain to the kid all the details, right? It's going to be okay. But then it ends up that the parents get divorced anyway, and then Johnny's very angry because mommy promised that it would be okay, or daddy promised that it would be okay. If the kid isn't old enough to understand that it's not that simple and it can't just be okay, right? There's complex dynamics involved that are beyond the ken of the child, and that's just the way it is. So unless people are interested or willing or able to kind of appraise themselves of that broader dynamic and the complexities of it and how it's not so simple, then they're just going to be stuck shouting on Twitter about how Trump's not my president anymore and I'm going to join Elon Musk's party, whatever. But
those people who are saying the band's going to make it and that they trust Trump, they have a point. They're not wrong. Well,
as long as they're nuanced about it.
Now they're saying that with respect to Epstein, but still,
yeah,
general point applies.
No, it's like, yeah, the Epstein thing is kind of like an example of the complexities of it. It's kind of like little Johnny suddenly realizing that, well, not even realizing, but
It's
being
being
shortchanged, you know.
It's a bit of a double whammy.
You told me you would release the Epstein files.
It's a bit of a double whammy because hard on the heels of Iran Wargate is this. This happened since the last show. Last Monday, as Netanyahu's flying in for his third visit to DC this year, the White House publishes a memo, but it's meant to sound conclusive, categorically stating Epstein more or less works alone. There's nothing else to see here. Trying to put it to bed. And that set off a shitstorm this week.
Well, justifiably so, because, I mean...
No one believes it.
Well, they've good reason not to believe it, if only from the words of...
Yeah.
Their own.
But there's also an element, a complexity element to this as well, where it's... you know, and it's much more simple in that sense. There's a thing called campaign promises that are well known. They're promises that a political leader aiming for election will make to the people, and it happens in most countries, pretty much every country, and has done probably since the dawn of politics. And then they generally don't fulfill them at all. You're lucky if you get one out of the long list that they promised, you know. So for people to seriously complain that this particular campaign promise that Trump and his people, including his sons and all these people, made beforehand isn't being fulfilled is, well, it's like, dude, how long have you been around? Like, I mean, campaign promises don't get fulfilled. Basically, that's to get you to vote for them. That's a kind of ideal list, you know, a wish list. It's my Amazon wish list type thing, you know. But I don't have the money to buy any of it type thing. But I'll actually make the Amazon wish list, you know.
But was it something that, because he said he was okay with doing it and he was okay with releasing it, and you know, not a big deal. But then when push came to shove, he realized that he could use it, or
Trump
yeah,
could use the Epstein list to.
Well, it was something that Harrison wrote for his political plonerology Substack, where at the highest levels of power, that kind of material is currency. So, I mean, if you got it and it's currency for the realm, then use it.
Yeah, my question is whether or not Trump or any of his people, who are all noobs, Dan Bongino, Bonga Bonga, Dan Bonga Bonga, and Kash Patel, and what's her face, the blonde chick. They're all like relative noobs, you know. They may have had positions. Well, most of them didn't actually have positions, but they may have had some kind of, you know, fringe positions within politics beforehand. But like, you know, you don't get to figure anything out or understand anything until you're actually in government. You try to do stuff, you know, because you don't get to try to do stuff until you're in government. And it's only when you're actually in government, in the White House, or a part of the administration, that you start to go, okay, now I've got power. Can I have some of that? And it's like, shutters come down. Shutters come down. Shutters come down. It's like there's no way through. So my question is whether or not they actually have any access at all to anything of any substance. Because if you think about Epstein and what it actually was, it was obviously an Israeli Mossad / deep American deep state aspiring basically, or a blackmail ring that's been going on for a very long time. You know, probably like 20 years, maybe longer. Probably longer. Back to the 90s, probably 30 years. So something that's been going on 30 years, right? And a lot of information has been collected and used in one way or another over that period of time. And the people, obviously, that the data collected by Epstein, or the people that he was working for, I mean, who are those people? And do they have it? Are they collecting it and then putting it on a White House server and saying, there you go, Mr. President, here's all the information we have. Oh, don't look at that part. That one's on you. You know, they're collecting information on successive White House administrations as well, you know, potentially. So the idea that the Trump administration has access to that is just an open question to me. They may have access to some information, but
there was a whistleblower from back in February who said that the FBI was destroying videos and files from the Epstein files before Cash and Bongino got in there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a fair question to ask. You know, just what was there by the time they even got there?
For sure. I mean, if you're trying to assassinate the president, trying to assassinate Trump and anybody associated with him, like obviously they're persona non grata as well. Well, and this is like a year ago, 6 months before, or even more than 6 months before he actually gets into office. Is that not time enough to just make sure that there aren't any Epstein files when everybody's talking about, Trump's going to release the Epstein files? And he's talking about it progressively during that time, since before his attempted assassination and afterwards. Surely, if you had any sense and you didn't trust Trump enough to want to kill him, you wouldn't just go leave some Epstein files lying around the White House so that he can pick them up when he comes in, you know, or available to his FBI director wherever he chooses, or his attorney general, etc. You know,
I'm pretty sure that if you look back at the execution of the warrants in 2019 for his ranch in New Mexico, the island, the Manhattan mansion, and his apartment in Paris, there was a dodgy thing where there was like a delay. They had already been emptied of evidence, and then warrants were executed at the same time that his plane returning to the United States, and he was arrested in person in July. Basically, they'd already been ransacked and cleared out a month before. So that's kind of like a very, you talk about the time delay that mainstream media live stream broadcasts have, you know, in case something goes wrong. So there's a delay and right there built into the beginning of this story, at least in its later investigation in 2019. Of course, Epstein goes back to 2005 as well. So,
so, I mean, people have to understand that there is a deep state
parallel structure
that has significantly more power than any president that comes into the White House. You know what I mean? And they don't give what they don't. If they don't want to give something, they don't want to produce something, or if they want to do it, they can more or less do to a large extent whatever they want.
I think people are disappointed because it's kind of like when you invest so much in keeping Trump alive with your mind and prayers, and then it succeeds. It's like the kind of will to power, the belief, you believe in it, you know, and that Trump's promising this. And for right until April, I mean, Pam Bondi's like, they're on my desk. And then they don't exist. Like, the crash and disappointment comes from, we trust Trump. He said this, his new FBI director, his new deputy FBI, they're all on board, and suddenly they're not. And it's just so disappointing.
And it's also the tie-in between some of the people who are involved in the Russiagate hoax and the DNC and the way that they've run America into the ground. There's tangential ties, and so it's like there's this club, this cabal of elite pedophiles who are destroying our country, and we want to see heads roll. You promised you would give us heads, and now you're saying
there are no heads,
that none of it exists.
Yeah, and you're all imagining it, and why are you still talking about it?
Yeah, well, that's the question. My question is why were they talking about it up until, like you said, up until April? And then suddenly
something changed.
I mean, did they only find out sometime after April or around that time that we can't actually do this, or we should stop? Like, I mean,
an insider, I presume just a White House insider, has said this is an absolute clusterfuck how they handle this. Something they must have been. It speaks to the slack, probably. The slack attitude on behalf of the parallel structure, that they can see what's going on here. They're leading up to an expose of some kind, and they just come in real late and go, "Nah, can't do that," in such a way that is shuddered, and it forces so much egg on their face.
I think bureaucracy. Well, not on their face, on the White House.
On the White House, yes.
Yeah. it probably takes time for. There's all the Doge thing happening in the first few months, all that business. So they were focused on different things, and they're getting around to the Epstein files, and maybe they just found out on the fly, like as they went along, that look.
I think something happened in the same week that Musk got a black eye.
Yeah, well,
I think that's the turning point. Pam Bondi is giving press statements just before that about don't worry, they're on my desk, trying to fend off the constant calls to do something about it.
You think somebody punched Musk?
Well, what's one of the first broadsides he takes at Trump when he goes ballistic against him in June?
Yeah, but he's on the list.
He's on the list.
Yeah.
Well, it actually started before then with Cash and Bongino in late May, where they said, we saw the file, Epstein definitely killed himself.
Yes, but Musk already has a black eye by then. Something is taking place. Some physical altercation and some showdown. Not necessarily the Epstein issue itself, because officially
why do you think
that also.
Why do you not believe Musk when he said his son punched him in the face? Which children tend to do, rambunctious 5-year-olds.
Because of the context of what was happening.
I don't think that's what happened. I don't think that's how they do business, like punch people to make them shut up. They make you shut up in other ways.
Well, that's a conspiracy theory.
Rather than to actually punch you in the face, like
the Black Eye Club.
That's just pattern recognition run amok. Like,
okay,
people can get black eyes now and again. I mean, I don't see it's possible, but I don't. I just think that's a bit too. It's too speculative, and I mean, try and follow it through, like a black eye.
Yeah,
and it wasn't even a big black eye. You know what I mean? It was like a bruise underneath the eye, like so. That wasn't much in the way of a reprimand. You know what I mean? It's like if he came out like totally, busted and bloodied, or if he had a secret stay in hospital for 2 weeks or something like that, maybe. But like, if somebody to give him a little knock on the eye is gonna, you better watch out. I can do the other one too. It's like, really?
Oh no, not any deep dark character, but rather an actual altercation.
You think Trump's punching people?
No, maybe Stephen Miller, because the rumor is that Miller's wife maybe having had an affair with Musk as well. So there's interpersonal stuff as well.
Oh, could have been over that then.
Yes, although that is
much more plausible.
That is the Musk black eye. It's from then on, his appearance in the White House are totally different to the previous thing. Where
right, so it could have been something else. But I'm just quite. I don't think the idea that that's how the deep state warns you off by giving you a black eye. But that kind of thing is far more plausible, I think, in the context of interpersonal, like having affairs with other people's wives and all kinds of all the shit.
I'm thinking more like whatever was. Obviously, you had the official clash between Musk and Trump in mid-late May is over spending and the budget deficit and the United States national debt. That is what he said after he parted ways with Trump. But it's also the week where we're about to go into what we've now seen: Iran, Iraq, the Iran war, and Israel attacking. And it's also roughly around the time when they stopped giving anything like promising statements about the investigation into the Epstein blackmail scandal. And so there's a shift in something happened in the White House, and it split the team. I suppose maybe that's a reasonable thing. It split the team between the purists who were like, well, no, we've made these promises to people, and the others who went, yeah, but the reality of governing is different.
Yeah, naive people, and Musk is naive. Like Musk is an outsider, and he has no real. Trump would have more than him, having served a term beforehand and all that kind of stuff, and learned in the School of Hard Knocks. He got at least to grips with how Trump got to grips with how governing works and stuff, whereas Musk didn't have any of that experience. So Musk can get to kind of like say be the purist, but it just means naive. Whereas Trump is showing a more evidence that he's more aware and more of a politician now than he was before.
So he is now a politician, eh?
Well, to some extent, yeah. I mean, you'll never take the art of the deal out of Trump, but you can't leopard can't change the spots. But he's a rare politician in that sense, you know what I mean? But
so part of the egg on the face, I want to let's throw up your tweet. There was the memo last Monday. Conclusive, 2 pages, very simple. Epstein worked alone. Nothing else to see here, folks. Followed by the disclosure, in the public interest of the video footage, which they said was 11 hours of outside his cell. Nothing happened except for a missing minute, which Pam Bondi said was just, something that happens with the camera system every night. But you pointed out that in your post about it here, metadata embedded in the video and analyzed by Wired and other forensic video experts shows that rather than being a direct export from the prison's surveillance system, which she claimed explicitly, this is the raw, unedited footage. I'm putting this to bed, people. Okay. The footage was actually modified, likely using the professional editing tool Adobe Premiere Pro. The file appears to have been assembled from at least 2 source clips, saved multiple times, exported, then re-uploaded on the DOJ's website, where it was presented as raw footage. So that was very easy to, they're lying.
Yeah.
The problem, and we know why we have some idea
Does she know
of
that,
why they're lying. Does she? Well, maybe not.
Maybe she does, maybe she doesn't. But the bottom line is it has to go away. We can't reveal any of this information. And that's the big question, is why can't they reveal any of it? Why won't they reveal any of it?
Yes, but you have a situation now where, unlike maybe with population and whether they believe Trump was killed but would have been killed by Iran, I think it's fair to say on this issue, most people don't believe it. Don't.
Yeah, and it's not personal in that sense, you know what I mean? I mean, it's not as big as killing Trump, It's just it's a social issue that people are concerned about and want something done about because they don't like the fact that there are pedophiles being protected by someone. Is Trump protecting them? Don't know. This work is complicated, Are people accusing Trump of protecting pedophiles? Well, is he? Or is he simply not? He simply doesn't have the information in order to not protect them, or he doesn't have the ability, or for all sorts of complicated reasons, it's not in his interest or America's interest or anybody's interest for him to, even if he could, and this is what I'm questioning as well, whether or not he actually has enough information to actually reveal anything, any hard evidence that would actually go anywhere. The situation is, it's not. Think about it. It's like people on Twitter what do they want? Reveal the list, release the list to where? To Twitter? To the court of public opinion? Or to a judge? There's a big difference, right? I think people just want it on Twitter, right? Just release it to us and we'll be the judge. We'll throw together an ad hoc judge and jury and we'll decide who gets to go to... That's not how it works. If you release it, then if you release any incriminating evidence, then the people that are implicated in it will have to follow the due process. You're not going to get the gallows out and start hanging people on the White House lawn, right? That's not how it works, right? So it has to be due process. And is there enough evidence to follow all that through? And what are the repercussions and blowbacks and all that kind of stuff? You know what I mean? And you look at all that and you just go, look, this is ridiculous. It's such a spider's web, and so many people are involved, including potentially me, Trump, in one way or another, that this has to go away.
So what you're alluding to is that Trump might really believe it when he wrote recently about how the list was just DNC made up bullshit, like the Russia hoax.
Well, that's his latest narrative, which is a doubling down in the attempt to make it go away. He's trying to essentially smear. I think he posted that today, or yesterday.
The big, those posts are getting longer and longer.
Big, long bullshit post. And it's just him doubling down and trying to get people to shut up about it by basically accusing them of being Democrats and effectively saying that this whole Epstein conspiracy theory is basically the same as, it's just a radical lefty conspiracy theory. In fact, not only is there no list, but, you could almost interpret from what he wrote is that any allegations about Epstein beyond what he was actually convicted of is a Democrat conspiracy theory. Is a Democrat theory or conspiracy theory or smear designed to screw over Trump or divide. He's getting into conspiracy theories himself, accusing the Dems of launching this, and that like all your minds, all you MAGA supporters' heads, all my supporters from Trump's point of view, his supporters, their minds have been infected by a Democrat conspiracy theory, which itself is a conspiracy theory. So it's like, dude, whatever. I mean, just go back to basics and all this. Like, I don't get involved in that bullshit food fighting, throwing shit all around. I'm not going to analyze, a load of nonsense that any given person will spew out about anything because they don't actually know what's going on. The back to basics is the fact that the Epstein blackmail ring has been going on for decades. It's run by the deep state / Mossad Israelis, and there's no distance between those two. They are and have been for a very long time one and the same. And they have been collecting information on everybody and anybody. Entry Level was basically set Epstein up as a financial advisor, and then through their network spread his name to all the great and the good and the glorious people around the world, so that they would all see him as the point man to go to get to offshore their assets. And in that process, then you get to contact, at least, you get to handle the money, and handle money, or the money of people, of like everybody and anybody. And that alone, as an entry level leverage, is leverage itself. It's the basic level 1 leverage you get over people by getting them to, through word of mouth, to use Epstein as their financial advisor, to take their cash and stick it into some Virgin Islands account or something, or somewhere in the Bahamas, right? And that alone gives you some leverage. For example, you know who's on the Epstein logs or lists or having been associated with, this is just one example, and you can extrapolate from this. Harry Potter, when he was making the Harry Potter movies.
Daniel Radcliffe?
Yeah. Him and all the rest, but him and all the rest of them, half of Hollywood.
Yeah.
Most of Hollywood. And all the scientists and all the...
Tom Hanks.
Everybody.
And the guy in the wheelchair, Hawkins.
Fucking everybody.
Now,
and
that's the flight logs.
Right. But that's enough, because then what happens is that at whatever year it was, Epstein's outed as a paedophile. And actually is prosecuted and goes to prison. And now anyone, Mr. Adam, did
tainted by association.
Exactly. So and not only just by association, but the fact is, so this guy seems like he's kind of dodgy. So you give him a bunch of your money to offshore on the Virgin Islands, did you? Yeah. Right.
Ryan Dawson.
Maybe that should appear in the media. Imagine even just pick anybody. Mm-hmm. Anybody who's maybe saying anti-Semitic things or saying pro-Palestinian things. Suddenly one day, for some weird reason, just them, there's a story, a write-up in mainstream media about them having kind of funneled a bunch of money into an offshore account associated with that Jeffrey Epstein. And it may be totally legit and nothing happens, but who wants to have their name in the papers under those circumstances? That's what I'm talking about. That's the threat. That's an entry level threat. Just have people associated with Epstein by apparently legitimate finances. And even though if you were to put a story out like that about someone like Daniel Radcliffe because he said something pro-Palestinian, or you threaten him with it or whatever, nothing comes of it. But the mere fact that his name is dragged through the papers, even for a few days, is enough to have leverage and pressure over that particular person. And they have it over fucking everybody. And that's not saying nothing about when you find out, when they come to your island and you find out that they have proclivities of one type or another, and then you end up having even
that's
more.
Level 2, yeah.
Well, that's level 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah. I think part of the morass of it all is that you've got flight logs, you've got the files, as in this probably what Pam Bondi was referring to. They're the files of the prior administration's, plurals, investigations. This is what we've inherited. You've got flight logs, the little black book, which is still available online. I mean, you can see all the names there. Then you've got the actual tapes.
Mm-hmm.
We're presuming they did exist. Absolutely. They said all his homes were rigged with cameras and everything. And they confiscated tons of stuff. So they did say that did not happen. So
Pam
that's
clarified.
the actual footage of who was caught with who.
But not even who was caught. Do you know what level 2 is? Level 2 is when you're in Jeffrey Epstein's island, because you're going to give him a big chunk of your money, right? And he's going to set up an account for you, some kind of company, whatever, where you can put your money in and not pay tax on it. So you're going to give him a big chunk of money. So you're going to want to meet the guy, right? We're better to meet him than on his island, right? Nice free holiday on the Bahamas, right?
An offshore island too.
Right. So you're there and you're just doing totally legit stuff, recommended by a trustworthy friend in the business, whatever, who said, talk to Epstein about getting your money away here. You go and meet him and talk to him and see what's going on. You sign some documents, whatever, you get a deal done, and you're very happy. And he says, look, I've got a really good massage therapist. You look a bit stressed. Do you want a massage? Sure, who doesn't want a massage? Click, 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 click. But it's just me getting a massage. No, really, it was just a massage. When you find yourself having to say that to the press, you're fucked.
Yeah.
It was just me getting a massage on Epstein's island. And it literally was, but sorry. Too late.
Well, presumably in the world where those tapes do exist, you would be able to have someone go through it and ascertain who actually did some dirty deeds, and then you actually have a list of the people who did the dirty deeds and the people who were like, no, there's nothing here.
That's a rational world where it doesn't just get dumped online or WikiLeaked. It goes to an investigation, a court, proper investigation, and you do in part. You take the footage, and maybe it's not clear always, or whatever, or some is lost or destroyed or whatever, but you still have a body of evidence to work with. And then on the other side, you do what Ryan Dawson did, which is you cross-check with the claims already depositioned, made in cases in court around the world by the girls who are now young women and the names they've said. And he's come up with a list that's not actually that big.
The one that
they're the ones that they're the most cited. And they're world leaders, a few.
Lots of Israeli palace.
Not so many.
Israeli
about 5.
leaders.
He put little flags next to the names. You've got Israeli leaders, Olmert, former leader Barak. I think the former president, one of whom was actually convicted of sexual assault in Israel, but with adults.
President.
And the rest are Americans. So you've got Governor Bill Richardson of New Mexico. That fits because, he had a ranch in New Mexico. Pauls on both sides, including, a very, he was instrumental in mediating in Northern Ireland, wasn't he? What's his name? George something.
Marshall. I don't know. Yeah.
I think he was, he had been a Democratic rep for Massachusetts. It's not that long a list. And but that's what you would get. You would get, okay, what's the evidence? We've looked at it. We're not going to publish the videos in public, of course, but you trust that the work they've done is solid, and just these names, and then these names according to the victims, and then you have a match. And heads roll / people are prosecuted,
and people are focusing too much on that, Glenn.
But that never happens. I think Americans, at least post-COVID, newly awoke MAGA Americans, are learning the hard way that that logical, rational next step never
actually happens.
And then you go through some not too distant history of other countries where there was a nationwide fucking scandal, and the judges, the chief of police, European commissioners, maybe the monarch himself, but certainly his close relations.
They're all implicated.
Gangsters, some Israelis, but they're not necessarily the center of it. All named by the victims. And the stuff was being cross-checked. So what happened in Belgium in the 90s was the honest it was a mistake, I suppose. So they were new to this. It was the first time you had a kind of global mediatized lens on a nationwide scandal. So in the Dutroux scandal, the first investigator, police detective, did the rational thing. And he put out a call for victims when it became clear that there were many. And he got lots of feedback, and you got to parse. You got to go do the hard work of the fantasizing, the fake stories, and the real ones.
They say this person
the
was
real
there,
ones held up because I'm thinking of one in particular. She ended up being outed and named Regina Louf. Mm-hmm. She was initially called X1, the first of the 12 people they'd accepted and listened to in many interviews and testimony. She ended up inadvertently. Her facts, names, places, descriptions of buildings, carpets, smells, people who were there, ended up solving something like 7 cold case murders in that country going back to the 80s. I mean, it was gold standard corroboration.
Yeah.
It's going along, and then it's shuttered. The cop is taken off. They tell him, you're no longer on this case because we found a conflict of interest. He attended a fundraiser for the victims' families. And it was a scandal. It provoked a mass, something like 5% of Belgian population protested in the White March. 600,000 people were in the streets. And the upshot of everyone knowing in the country and getting a sense of how bad this was is that it just went away. They managed to take control of the investigation and whittle it back down to more or less a lone wolf. That Dutroux himself was the evil predator. He abducted the girls for himself and a couple of other, working class poor accomplices. And any links, any further investigation. They also trashed Regina Louf, who was she was a strong character because she's still alive. I believe she ended up having a family of her own. They trashed the hell out of her as a fantasist and tried to debunk things one by one, but you only find something approximating the truth in work that was done about 10, 15, 20 years later by investigative journalists who made documentaries, which were never allowed to be published on TV anyway. Maybe they're online now. And they were solid. The event never ended. This journalist I have in mind, I forget her name. I think her surname is Frenkel, Belgian journalist. She found that since the initial uproar and discovery of bodies in the basement, young girls and bodies in the garden, in the basement and garden of Dutroux's house in southern Belgium, that some 20 people who connected with the investigation and the case had died suspicious deaths since then. That's what happens. There's a lock is put on the whole thing, and they're quietly bumped off.
Yep.
One after the other, after the other, after the other. And that, the Dutroux woke me. I lived in Belgium at the time, so I was like, I was too young to really grok it. Mm-hmm. But in hindsight now, if you go and look, Dutroux was southern Belgium, but with some international implications. Then in the late 90s, just over the border, there was a town called, it's actually bizarre because it kind of sounds like that surname Dutroux. Outreau in northern France. There was a scandal there where like almost a large number of notables in a small town were all trading each other's kids to each other. Mm. And there was a judge and a lawyer and a doctor, and you're like, what the fuck is going on here? This is much more small scale local pedophilia. And there was a trial and there was a conviction of like 2 people. But the gist of the story was that clearly everyone in the town knew, and many were involved in it. Then that was quickly followed by another scandal in Angers, which is another idyllic French town, northern France, but further west on the Loire River. Same thing. You've got these network of people all trading each other's kids. Again, this is still all late 90s. Then there's a scandal in Toulouse, further south in France, involving politicians this time. They're named. Then another one in Portugal, brought down a government, in fact. That's probably the one that had the furthest legs. The government did collapse as a result of that. Then Savile in the UK. Then the Zandvoort files. The Zandvoort's a place in the Netherlands where they found CD-ROMs of material that an honest investigator actually looked into and realized, holy shit, there's kids in this that we know from the Dutroux case and these other cases in France. And they realized the linkage between all these things. And one investigator took that the furthest. Tragic what happened to him. He's dead now. Marcel Vervlossem, I think he was Belgian himself. He ended up dying in prison, accused and convicted of himself of child sex crimes. Almost certainly that was planted stuff. You look at how close those all were in the late 90s, early 2000s in time and space in Western Europe. And you get a sense of how pervasive this is. I don't want to go full Alfred Kinsey and say everyone's a pedo, but a lot of fucking people are. Mm-hmm. And it's like an entire ecosystem around us. And so Epstein is like, it's like a VIP version of it. Mm-hmm. But it's so, like, do people really follow this through and like, we need to do something about this? I totally understand you. I don't want to live in a world with that, where that we just keep brushing this under the rug. Mm-hmm. But it's so pervasive; it's everywhere. The solution, the expiation, the justice you're looking for is like a total civil war because there's so fucking many of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the longer you put it off, the worse it gets.
True. There's a case to be made for that. But the true, like, that seems to spring out of nowhere. The extent of it. But maybe not. Maybe other you go back in history and other things were put off and it grew and grew, and the kind of egregiousness and the scale of it. There's stuff when you read through the transcripts. I mean, Dutroux was actually in prison already for rape of a minor, and while he was in there, it was common knowledge among the other inmates that he was meeting Michel Nihoul, who was tried but actually cleared in the courtyard of the prison about how they were going to expand the network. They were Eastern Europe was coming online. It was about to join. Many countries were about to join the European Union. Oh, opportunities in the East, man. Yeah, we can get carloads of girls from Slovakia and beyond that from Ukraine. Ukraine's a big hub, big industry now. So yeah, it gets worse. It gets worse because stuff isn't done, but stuff isn't done in part because this is so antithetical to what most decent people can even imagine goes on out there. Like I said, I think we're talking about an entire parallel ecosystem. Lobachevsky would say ramified networks of psychopaths and other deviants. And we tend to think that they're top. Epstein makes it look indeed like it's the top and the billionaires and they're powerful and maybe they're Jewish, you know, there's a lot of Jewish connections here in Israel and blackmail. Mm-hmm. Like it's over there and at the top. But my God, if you really start looking at these cases, you realize that there could be a town down the road from you. And it's working class, middle class, people who are just see it. They just see everything so differently from us, you know.
At the end of the day, there's not going to be any day in court or justice, and you know it's nice that people are clamoring for it, and because in the clamoring for that kind of justice, even if they're not going to get it, it increases the awareness. Let's say,
yes,
to the greatest extent possible, so that people can understand that this is the kind of people who rule over us. This is the nature of a lot of the people who actually supposedly rule over us. But that's the point. The point is, it's all for all of this stuff any revelations that come out about anything that are, the opposite of what people thought about how the world works, and they start to learn
And how
it really
people
works
are.
and on the nature of people in positions of power and all that kind of stuff. It's just for people's elucidation. It's for their edification. It's not. It would be nice to have justice served, but that's not the point. The point is for people to wake up and understand that this is the nature of the world that they live in, and then to, at some point, maybe through mass consciousness or something, choose something different. And it'll have, that can happen in some kind of maybe non-linear way. But these people protect themselves and have always protected themselves, and have the ability to protect themselves in a way that just makes it impossible for them to ever be prosecuted or to come out. And it's the way of the world, and Trump has understood that that's the way of the world, and he's understanding he's learning a lot of stuff about how the world actually works, and that's sharply contrasting with what people expected of him. They see him as a kind of like a savior who's going to put the world to right and make America great again in terms of American values, but it's too far gone, basically.
Yeah. I
can't undo this, especially, and from the geopolitical point of view, it's like I said, America has been set up. America is the way it is, and America's the global hegemon today, for well-known reasons. And Trump has to work with that. He can't pull out certain kind of central pillars of America's position in the world because it's quote unquote the right thing to do. Because if he does that, he'll do exactly the opposite of making America great again. He'll
in the short term,
bring on the destruction of America.
In the short term.
Short term, that will last for a long time.
But it depends on how it goes and how it plays out, because you don't quite know what's going to happen after that. I mean, like to an extent, like, obviously, like global trade will break down, and then there's going to be a whole, economic foobar and blah, blah. But I mean, it's one of those things that you see in history where if you don't clean up your mess, Mother Nature will do it for you, and she's far less discriminatory about what she destroys.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like you're faced with a hard choice of either I do this myself and it's going to be a hell of a ride and many won't survive, or I wait for Mother Nature to do it and then it's going to be worse.
Yeah, but none of them are aware of Mother Nature doing anything about anything. You know what I mean? That's their biggest blind spot. You know what I mean? Because,
well, do you think that would have any kind of impact on decision making if they knew that these kinds of things were going to happen? Like
some of them probably do, and they're protecting themselves. And they'll say, "Go have at it, Mother Nature. Kill all the plebes."
Yeah,
I have my bunker. The Zuckerbergs and all. They are actually taking Armageddon, an apocalyptic scenario, seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I say, that eye opener of the tapestry of large numbers of people who, including mothers. I mean, the mothers were asked during these trials, you're selling your kids and having a smoke next door while it's going on. And they're like, well, it's just a way to make a little side money, How many people are like that?
Kill them all.
I think it would shock people to realize just how widespread that is. So in the Epstein situation, how many of the parents were really that totally unaware? that little JD was going to the rich man's house again to earn a little pocket money, you know, which isn't to excuse or downplay the stuff either, but it's a hornet's nest that is, yeah, it's super ugly. And it's not on. People are trying to put it back on government. No, you do a real investigation. Give us a clean list. Cut off the heads cleanly. Thank God. Okay, it's put to bed. Yeah, no, it's on you to get to grips with what people are really like, especially those in power. Power corrupts and so on, and that situation has worsened because we see how feckless government is in all areas, definitely. But you won't get any real expiation or justice just throwing it all up and out there, you know.
Alex in the chat made a good point with think about all the OnlyFans parents these days, because there's, I mean, obviously OnlyFans is now a huge thing, and you know there's tons of people on it.
Yeah.
And there's a shocking number of parents who are involved in these women's OnlyFans accounts, helping them create content and all that stuff.
Yeah, I want my baby to succeed. Les Wexner, the Ohio billionaire intimately connected with Epstein here, he owned Victoria's Secret, or still owns Victoria's Secret. What is that? I mean, it's a high street lingerie shop, and it's targeting teenage girls and young women. And who were the models who modeled those catalogs online and on TV? Well, Jean-Luc Brunel was key in getting models, sending them to the US. Of course, it ended up, we realize now it's dual purpose, but it's enmeshed in everything. I don't know how many, parents are willingly participating in that. And it's a shock when they find out, and then they adapt and they go, okay, or they don't, and they're happy to go along with it.
Yep.
So having said that, Tucker Carlson then speaks up at the Turning Point USA event in Florida. And that's kind of been all the rage now. His 10, 15-minute speech. It was a good speech.
Good speech.
There was fire. And he's focusing on the Israel connection. No one's allowed to say that. To cheers. That brings it back to the geopolitical element. I mean, okay, nothing will be done, but it is seriously a problem, optics-wise. There's a lot of people swiping back at Trump, at Tucker today, because he made an aside about Bill Ackman, Jewish billionaire in the United States, in this speech that was otherwise a rant about the total cover-up of the Epstein connections. And he rants, how did Bill Ackman get his $9 billion? And people are pushing back on, what'd you bring him in for? What's he connected to? He's not in any way named as having anything to do with Epstein. So I don't think he intended it this way, of course, but the counterattack against Tucker's speech, picking out this side issue, is that, look at him. Look what he's doing. He's lumping in just Jews. There's an anti-Semitic overtone. You can see why they would see it that way. These people. That's in the air. That's in the air with all of this stuff. It's more grist for the mill of
what, the rise of anti-Semitism?
The JQ, Israel, the war with Iran. Yeah, why Trump can't get commit to his promises and stuff. It's so hot right. I mean, it's like Fuentes on Candace Owens last week as well. He's making a stance about Jews have too much power, too much money, and too much influence. Okay, so where is your stance for truth and justice going? What are we proposing here? Because the same could be asked of Tucker Carlson. The investigations into some of them, confiscation of their assets, banning them from political influence. I mean, no one is ever, much less Trump, is ever going to start on that road. I mean, that's...
Well, so ultimately, it's like the Jewish influence in America is ascribed. The problem with it is not necessarily Jewish influence, but what they do with that influence. That's their problem. Nobody wants to just like say, let's get rid of all the Jews just because they're Jews, right? That's anti-Semitic, right? I hate Jews just because they're Jews because I don't like them in America. It's what they're doing that is the problem. And the main thing that Carlson comes up with most often is, supporting Israel, giving money to Israel, $3 billion a year,
mm-hmm.
and then obviously plus fighting wars, quote unquote, wars for Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And my problem with that is that it's not a war for Israel; it's a war for America.
Well,
it has been.
That's what Fuentes brings up in his interview with Candace, where he's referring to someone, maybe it was RFK Jr., maybe it was someone else, but he references that statement where Israel is referred to as the aircraft carrier, the U.S.'s aircraft carrier in the Middle East, but he doesn't see it that way. He very much just sees it as the Israeli fifth column is the problem and doesn't recognize that U.S.-Israeli interests are very much joined in the hip in that respect, where you could almost even see it as America using Israel as its proxy, not just as its aircraft carrier in the Middle East, but also as its proxy for various things in order to keep its hands from getting dirty in various respects. I'm thinking specifically of 9/11 as an example, like the JFK assassination, where you use Israelis in order to keep your hands roughly clean.
Well, I mean, the CIA was all over the JFK assassination as well, and obviously they were also, if you're into conspiracy theories in 9/11, the CIA, and I mean, that's where they're joined at the hip, but there's no separation between the two, they both have our cause is your cause. In fact, pretty sure in the aftermath of 9/11, someone, I don't know if it was the dancing Israelis, I think it might have been ascribed to the dancing Israelis saying to someone that, basically our cause is your cause. This is good, and our cause is your cause.
Netanyahu himself, maybe.
Yeah. Somebody said that our cause is your cause, and that's been true for a long time.
Yeah, it was someone said it when they were arrested.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
One of the
Mossad moving companies.
Right, one of those.
Urban moving systems.
Yeah. And that's been the case for a long time. Like you're saying, Israel was set up as an aircraft carrier, a land-based aircraft carrier, or a garrison. It was an imperial garrison, like a Roman garrison, major Roman garrison back in the day in the Middle East, to control that region, because it's a very important, strategically a very important region for America. It's the seat of America's power, and not so much necessarily. I mean, all things being equal, America could kind of like try and divest from the Middle East and find other resources, whatever. But the problem is, it's kind of like, I can't leave that. I can't just walk away from that region. Even technically, I could. Let's say America produces enough oil and gas, whatever, domestically to fuel its own economy ongoing. The problem is that you'd be leaving it to someone else, and that's why they don't leave it. One of them, at least as important as keeping it for themselves, it's so that other people can have it. Which is why you have, Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, and now Iran happening.
Yeah. And that's where I like to make the distinction between, is it really good for America, or is it just good for the people who are running America? Because is it really good for America to do those things? No, not necessarily. There is great potential for America to do quite well outside of all of that crap. But as far as the American elites who currently occupy...
For the American economy, wouldn't be happy either. American markets would be very sad. They would have a downturn in their faces.
Yeah, but that would be a lot easier to turn around than...
Well, how about no reserve currency? Flesh that one out. Tell me where it goes.
It's doable.
No longer reserve currency.
It's doable.
After hyperinflation and the crash of the American economy and the impoverishment
that still gets to my point. Like, all that's doable. It's all manageable.
It's not making America great again.
It's manageable. The thing is that it's never going to happen because the people who actually run America aren't going to let it happen, because that's not what they care about. They don't care about America or the American people. They want to get as much power as they can, keep it, and make sure no one else gets it. So those are two very different things. And like, yeah, I'm not saying it wouldn't be like
painful.
It wouldn't be a bit painful.
Just a little
it certainly would, but it's not like, I mean, you look at what happened to the USSR after the fall, and
yeah, something like that.
So, like, yeah, there was a decade of
the pillaging
of
America, and then America no longer being America, being pillaged by other countries, and it being completely unrecognizable to what it is today, and it being like a second or third class nation. You're talking about, shithole countries. It would be a shithole country very quickly.
You're talking about population contraction. Russia contracted by about 10%.
It's existential for these people, and it is in reality, which is why I can understand it. But they've got themselves into that position, and they're faced now with the only way out is through. I am in blood so far steeped in that to go back would be as tedious as to go over, to quote Macbeth.
Yeah, I remember the part you're referring to. Fuentes glibly passed it over as one of the things people say.
Yeah.
Probably Dave Smith, because he was going on and on about Dave Smith. Oh, and then they say it's because it's an unsinkable aircraft carrier in the Middle East, and that's what keeps us here. And Biden, the AIPAC president, he says that too. But that you can't just pass it over.
Exactly.
Nick Fuentes can afford to have a job where he's full-time activist, independent podcaster, commentator on the back of American wealth disparity caused by an imbalance in global trade or the financialization thereof of the US dollar as the petrodollar reserve currency. He's in the position he's in. Literally, he's able to do what he's doing. He's not having to work a hard job and try to eke it out.
Most Americans are fishing, are like fish in water. They don't sense the water, and they don't understand that. They've been brought up with that American mythos for so long, and they've evidence that it's true because of all the wealth and all that kind of stuff, and they just don't understand, and they don't want to know. They don't want to see the truth of it. You know what I mean? They want to believe the myth that it's through American enterprising spirit and blah 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 blah. But I can't force anybody to see something that they don't want to see. And that's the reality. And like I said, in the Middle East, Israeli interests are American interests and have been since the creation of the State of Israel, even beforehand. And they're terrified, and that's why Trump's terrified about BRICS and all this kind of stuff and a multipolar world. But why don't they Marco Rubio give lip service to multipolar world and that kind of stuff, and we thought there was some hope there that they would. And maybe Trump is trying to find a way to reconfigure America's position in the world in a burgeoning multipolar world. But the more they look at it, the more it seems like it's not really possible to go that route without there being too much pain that they're unwilling to accept under their leadership, at least. They don't want to be the administration. He doesn't want to be the Secretary of State. Trump doesn't want to be the president under whose watch the whole thing went tits up, and he got exactly the opposite of what he claimed he was going to get. So it's about legacy and all that kind of stuff. Remember, these are people who are only there for 4 years. They don't really give a shit. They're doing it just for as long as they're there and as long as they're responsible, right? And they pass it off to someone else afterwards, and they can handle the difficult decisions after that.
Are you noticing the change in tone and words from this White House about weapons to Ukraine?
Am I noticing a change in tone?
Yeah, well, it began campaigning last year with enough, no more weapons to Ukraine. The whole base was riled up about it, you know. And then an ardent commitment, beginning of peace talk with Russia. Come to find out, after Hegseth himself explicitly stated last week at the NATO summit in the Netherlands that they had stopped sending a whole array of weapons. Then this week we have Rubio stating,
and we're sending more.
Not only are we still sending stuff to Ukraine, but in fact, we never stopped. Here we go. And that the Secretary of Defense misspoke. He didn't understand that, in fact, some things were temporarily under review while we checked how many stocks we had at home. But otherwise, nothing ever stopped. And we were all led to believe that at least some of it has stopped. And Trump was saying in his statements, I've stopped. Well, I'm bringing it back now because I'm not happy with Putin, giving the sense that, you know, now we're like, Trump's really not happy, and he's supposedly going to make some announcement tomorrow, some big announcement about Russia, which will probably be a reversal to the Biden policy.
Who knows? He talks about big announcements and then walks them back and all that kind of stuff. So you have to wait and see. But the thing about Ukraine is that Ukraine was devised under Biden. Well, long before that, actually. Ukraine started in 2014. In fact, Ukraine started in the early 2000s. They started planning to use Ukraine against Russia in the early 2000s. They were began the training programs in the early 2000s, culminating in the coup in 2014. It's all of a piece. You have to have the broad perspective and see it all as a long-term plan. Okay, there's hitches and bumps and delays here and there, but it's generally a long-term plan, and it all fits with the new American century. It's neocons. It's a project for the new American century, which was the 21st century, which was a statement by them, and they're as close to deep staters as you can get publicly, that this was our new policy, and there's a bunch of different aspects of this new policy of making sure that America remains the global hegemon throughout the 21st century for 100 years. And to do that, we're going to have to fight back against peer competitors like Russia and China. Are you showing something?
I sent it to Scotty a while ago, but I don't see it yet. Can you put, carry on.
Yeah. Never planned to halt. Okay, so that's just what you're saying. So the point about Ukraine was that the Ukraine war was planned a long time ago and it was planned, and it was on a timeline, on the same timeline, effectively, or on a parallel timeline with the 7 countries in 5 years. And that's all part of securing the world, remaking the world, or taking action in the world to secure American hegemony for the 21st century. Central to that was pushing back against Russia and China because they're peer competitors. They knew they were going to become peer competitors. They were going to have to deal with them. They had foresight, these people, these peanuckers. And dealing with the Middle East and using Israel to deal with the Middle East, because you had to deal with the Middle East in order to secure it for America as well. But for the same reason, to stop us, part of pushing back against Russia and China was to not let the Middle East fall to Russia and China. Souring relationships with Western Europe and Russia was part of it as well, because that's pushing back against Russia. So you had to divide Western Europe and Russia and keep the European Union, which itself was a project of the Americans back in the late 90s. Well, before that, but it was essentially, we got to group all of these Western European countries together in one union, which is far more easily controlled than individual countries where they have
that began
decisions. And not only that, but it was also to capture as many of the former Eastern European Soviet bloc states after the fall of the Soviet Union. So we got to pull all that in, expand Europe and keep Europe American, keep the Middle East American, push back Russia and China, use Ukraine to, as the timeline played out, use the war in Ukraine, provoking a war with Russia, so pulling Russia into a conflict in Ukraine, so that during that time Russia's military capabilities are focused in that area, so they can't do anything to help anything to can't do anything to upset our plans in the Middle East. We'll kick them out of Syria by getting rid of Assad. We'll bog them down in a war in Ukraine, and during that time when they're nicely bogged down in Ukraine, they won't be able to do anything to help Iran, so we'll take care of Iran. And then we'll move on to, once we've done that, we've secured Europe, we've secured the Middle East, we're going to move into China. And that's how we're going to secure the world, the global order, with America's hegemon into the 20th century, for the 21st century.
So,
and Trump now is, one question that it raises is, why is Trump trying to get out of Ukraine? Surely he wants to keep Russia bogged down in Ukraine. Why would he be trying to wrap it up? Well, these things don't always go to plan necessarily, right? So they hope that Russia would be kind of like weakened, or not just that it would be bogged down in Ukraine, but it would be weakened by the conflict in Ukraine, etc. But the tide is kind of like Putin played a different game and basically took his time and is effectively winning, let's say, in Ukraine. He's on the cusp of winning. But so they're still trying to, Trump wants that to be ended as soon as possible, because he's kind of trying to cut his losses. He's now in the White House, and he's decided he inherited this plan from others, right? And he's not really in control of it, but he can do what he can do by his art of the deal and his diplomacy and stuff. But he's getting frustrated with Putin because he wants it over and done with, because he doesn't want Russia to continue on doing what it's doing, because it will win more bigly, let's say. It will win more. And that would be a blow to Europe, because Russia will, its prominence and its prestige in the world will be increased, and its influence in the world will be increased, which is the opposite of what they want to achieve. So he wants to, like, Putin, just end it now. So, it's kind of like when you're losing a game, can we call an end of the game now before you beat me any worse? Because I've got other games I need to play. I need to move on, I mean, I hope that.
And my hand in those other games will be weakened if I come out of this losing more than I have to.
For sure, yeah. But at the same time, the strategy is, and Trump is like, look, we got to move on to the Middle East, deal with this Middle East, deal with Iran, and then move on to China. But we don't want to necessarily just walk away from Ukraine and let Russia have it all, because that would be bad for us. So how do we square those two? Well, we had to try to get Putin to stop. If that's not going to work, then we're going to move on to the Middle East and China, but we're going to use the Europeans to keep Russia kind of bogged down in Ukraine. So Trump tried his gambit of get Putin to call a ceasefire or to agree to a ceasefire now and end it, and so I can claim that I ended another war and get a Nobel Peace Prize, and then I'll move on to the Middle East, whatever. And anyway, even if Russia were to win in Ukraine, let's say it were to take everything up to the Dnieper River, like half of Ukraine, it's not over then. Russia can't suddenly go, okay, let's now focus on, reasserting our influence in the Middle East or helping China, whatever, because there's a process after that. I mean, it's not just you've got half of Ukraine that is still a threat to the half of Ukraine that Russia just took. The western half of Ukraine still being having weapons pumped into it and training and arming and funding, etc., of the Ukrainian military. That's still a problem for Russia. As much as it would be a win for Russia to take half of Ukraine, it's still a headache and a problem that they're going to have to, several years are going to have to transpire before it's all settled, So it's still ahead. So it's still a win in that respect in terms of bogging Russia down. Okay, they're not actively continuing the war. Let's say that when the war is finished, the war isn't actually ongoing anymore. But we can still use that part and the enmity, let's say, or the fact that you just had a 3 or 4 year war with Ukraine, on your border, basically, that doesn't just all settle down into wonderful peace overnight, right? You can still use the Ukrainians to harass and attack Russia and all kind of stuff. They're going to still have to dedicate a significant amount of resources and personnel to maintaining the peace that they won. So,
but it seems like it would be, I guess it would still be quite costly for the US and its proxies to Because if your goal is to take Iran and
Take down Iran.
Regime change.
Yes.
Regime change Iran to
Chaos. Syria, basically, infighting, civil war, chaos, madness, bloodshed.
Yeah.
Other countries getting involved. Fuck up the Middle East, basically.
Yeah, so if that's your goal and you are getting Russia bogged down in Ukraine in order to prevent them from being able to help, I guess from the standpoint of minimal Russian intervention in Iran, it makes more sense to have Russia involved in Ukraine more actively, which means keeping it ongoing. But what's the cost of that in terms of like U.S. money, troops, and weapons?
That's why Trump's great idea is to have the Europeans take the lead in that now, so the US can back away from it, but the Europeans will buy American weapons and send them to Ukraine. So beforehand, up until now, it's been under Biden in particular, it's been America, organizing the shipments and the delivery of weapons to Ukraine and the training of the troops, and in fact, very often using a lot of the weapons with Ukrainians, having a very active, very involved role in the actual prosecution of the war against Russia, to taking all that, backing away from all of that, and just bring it down to the minimal level of just making sure that there are Ukrainian soldiers enough left and they have weapons to continue the war at some level, because even if it's a low level war, that's enough to keep Russia distracted, and the Europeans can do that, and Trump's going to make some money by having them buy. That's why he wants them all to increase. When he talks about them increasing their GDP, their spending of their GDP to 5% on NATO, quote unquote, on NATO, what he means is a big chunk of that 5% is going to be buying American weapons, which is good for the American economy, right? And sending them to Ukraine.
Okay.
So Europeans, this is your war. You handle this. This isn't
Yeah. Okay.
I got all the things to do in the Middle East. Me and BB got to sort out some shit in the Middle East, and then we got to pivot to China. Got to get our aircraft carriers over there and shirt front the Chinese. We got
do you go from
get the Australians and
the Aussies and the Taiwanese?
Yeah, and a few other hangers on and the Japanese, maybe try and get them in to all. It's kind of like they're trying to their plan, I think, is to take the same approach as they took with Russia, which is people used to think that mutually assured destruction was where two major nuclear powers would just they wouldn't even touch each other, they wouldn't go near anywhere, go near each other at all aggressively, right? It's just don't even think about it, no point, because mutually assured destruction. But the Americans, and they tried for a long time thinking up ways to get preemptive first strike where they could subvert MAD by we could actually launch weapons at Russia and they wouldn't be able to respond. They played that out. That's not going to work. We're probably going to get nuked back. So the next best thing is, we can kind of harass them, because the idea of mutually assured destruction is that it's unthinkable that anybody would use nuclear weapons, right? So why don't we steal the initiative here and use that against Russia, for example, by invading Ukraine, effectively building up an army in Ukraine to harass Russia and threaten Russia. And they know that it's us, and we'll fund them and give all the weapons to them, and they know that it's us. And people like people have been talking over the past few years, we're this close to nuclear war between the US and Russia, because everybody understands it's a war between Russia and the US. But the Americans are sneaky, because they just go so far. They're like, I'm just taking, you're a nuclear power, and so am I, so we're not meant to harass each other. But I'm like, because it's unthinkable to use nuclear weapons, and you know it's unthinkable to use nuclear weapons. So I go, I'm just going to take that thing that you own there. It's only a small thing. And they're like, don't, and you're like to me, don't do that. I'm like, what? You're going to use nuclear weapons over that? Come on. Don't be so dramatic. You're a bit hysterical, aren't you? You're not going to use nuclear weapons. Nobody's going to use nuclear weapons, right?
Over this.
I'm just going to take another little piece of that. I'm going to push you a little bit further. I'm going to flick things at you and stuff. What? I blew a what do you call
spitball?
A spitball at you, and you're going to use nukes over that? Slowly tormenting, harassing, and giving you a problem, basically, where they're taking more, they're threatening to take more, they're and in that way avoiding the threat of a nuclear exchange. So they're seeing how far they can push it. Then somebody just sat down and thought, well, like, within that idea of mutually assured destruction, the idea that nobody's ever going to use them, surely we have room to operate within that. Then we can do all sorts of shit up to the point of, but not passing the point of where you would actually provoke a nuclear response. There's lots of room to maneuver there.
Mm-hmm.
Because nobody's going to use nuclear weapons, right? Who wants to be the first to use nuclear weapons?
Yeah.
So they'll do the same thing with China, Get the Aussies and the Japanese and a few American aircraft carriers to go and protect Taiwan and then go to China. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to use your nuclear weapons?
They've arguably already done this with China, but just in a different age.
Yeah.
Korea, Vietnam.
Yeah.
To contain communism, but really that drew China into both wars. But now it's a more high-tech age, so proxy wars, cyber attacks, financial attacks. Well, the British are officially, they're totally up for taking over from the US and are actively telling their population that they must be prepared for war with Russia within the next 5 years.
Right, and what's that means? That's a means to an end, right? Which is to quell any public.
That picture.
That dude. Quell any public dissatisfaction with them taking taxpayer monies that might have gone to the healthcare service and putting them into arms manufacturing. That's all it is. That's what they say, this shit. And they've been saying it for the past, pretty much since 2022, since Russia invaded Ukraine. They've been saying the same thing. We're going to have to go to war with Russia. We're going to have to go. And what do you mean by we're going to have to go to war with Russia? Well, if we have to go to war with Russia, we're going to have to take a bunch of your money and buy loads of weapons, right? So that's why you're saying that. Because arms manufacturers get a bunch of money and give it to politicians.
You say they've been saying this since 2022. It's a bit longer than that.
Well, specifically in this context.
In this context, yeah. Shea Bowes found this. This is a British news report from the 1970s. Have a listen.
This is commie Russia, right?
Well, that's the Soviet lineup. In the next few days, we'll be looking in more detail at how and if the West can match up to it in 4 particular fields. First, attack by land in Central Europe. Second, attack by mines and missiles at sea. Third, attack by submarines. And fourth, attack by air. Russian tanks practicing a mass river crossing. What if this were the Elbe that divides Germany, and this was a communist invasion of the West? With their present weight of armor, they could, if they wanted to, throw across 3 times the number of tanks we would have to defend with. What's more, they could concentrate their armored thrusts in such a way that at the point of attack they would have a superiority of 7 or 8 to 1. Lined up against them would be the West's allied forces in Central Europe under NATO command, over 500,000 men. 1/10 of them, the British Rhine Army, defending a portion of the line just here. Britain's forces, like the other national forces, will be divided up into battle groups like this one, that we got to form up in a square for us just to show off their size.
Lovely.
Multiply this by about 20, and you've got the size of Britain's Rhine Army. Multiply it by 200, and you've got, very roughly, the size of the West's ground forces in Central Europe.
Smashing.
This battle group is an all-arms fighting unit, around 50 tanks, plus mechanized infantry and artillery, designed to fight fully mobile battles to try and hold up the Soviet advance. This is the Iron Curtain, the start point of any communist thrust. From here, the highly mobile forces of the Warsaw Pact could push forward the 120 miles to the River Rhine in less than a day.
Yeah, well, that's Cold War propaganda at the time. Lovely, smashing.
It's not substantially any different. The Russians are coming. We must prepare any day now. Quick, let's spend more money on,
they had a reason,
on the military.
They had a reason to say it back then because of communism. Today, they don't have any reason, which is why we can understand why they're actually doing it. Although the reasons for it were the same, in a certain sense. Cold War never ended because Cold War was about...
It wasn't really about...
It was about global dominance, right?
Yeah.
not about ideologies, it was about global dominance. So, yeah.
Last week you gave a similar geopolitical context for why Iran was so important to the US / the West as a whole. Since then, we found a couple of things. You sent them to me, I think, that day. I think we should share these items. So these are two things that are ongoing in some stage of development. In fact, one of them is successful. Just about a week before Israel launches strikes on Iran, the first freight train departing China for Iran reached its destination. This is outside of the purview of American sanctions. So it's the first physical trade linkage over land ever between China and Iran. You also bypass, of course, the seas, which are dominated by Western insurance and financial interests. But that's some of May 29th, so that's coming up. It gives you a sense of the physical imperative material urgence for why now, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And the other item is ongoing. It's not in the same stage of development. It's the international north-south transport corridor. This is largely a Russian-Iranian development project to link sea trade from India that would just avoid having to go through the Suez or around Africa to reach the West, and would instead go up through Iran along the Caspian Sea with an optional transport route at Baku, capital of Azerbaijan, and then on to Astrakhan and into southern Russia, Moscow, and so on, and then into the West, totally short-circuiting the entire reason for why the British Empire took the form it did, with the jewel in the east of India and control of the choke points like the Suez and the Malacca Straits and so on, and rule Britannia. Britannia rules the waves. The reason they did rule the waves was because they wanted to rule all global trade. This would basically end it.
And you notice that the Chinese and Russians decided that it's much safer to go. They can actually go create trade networks over land, whereas they can't do it by sea because seas. Well, America's aircraft carriers, and so in a certain sense, America rules the waves to a large extent these days, which is why the Russians and Chinese have to decide to.
Or the insurance companies. Hence, Russia's oil tankers suddenly become the shadow fleet because they're not insured under Western sanctions.
It's much more precarious to travel by sea, to do stuff by sea, than it is in the context of if you were at war or.
Yeah. Well, Russia has had several ships be sunk by Western ops in the last few years. And just keeping up with that, I mean, I think the spat, I don't know where they're at, the spat between Azerbaijan and Russia is at the moment, but just a couple of news items in the last couple of days. Lo and behold, the new stooge leader, Al-Qaeda leader of Syria, meets with Aliyev of Azerbaijan to discuss new energy cooperation as they rebuild ties, for the first time in 20 years between those countries. Specifically, the Azeris talking about delivering gas to Syria via Turkey and helping Syria build a oil pipeline, which brings you right back 20 years to the oil pipeline project that Assad nixed because he didn't want to piss off Moscow and Tehran. And that's probably the impetus for why they turned on Assad in 2007. That would have been Qatari linkage through Saudi Arabia, Syria, and on to the West. And the second item, well, it's kind of being... There's no real news development here. This is like an analysis as reported in Western media. It gives you an insight into how Washington, London, Brussels, Berlin thinks of this, and in this case, Hong Kong, Headline: How Azerbaijan defies Russia and Iran in Eurasia's new order.
Mm-hmm.
This is what they're trying to make real. Eurasia's new order, i.e. not the BRICS multipolar world order,
Mm-hmm.
our
Trying to
new
do their
order.
own. Do their own. Yeah, they're copycats. We're trying to. It's kind of almost like a hat tip to the need for a multipolarity, or the reality of multipolarity coming kind of down the road.
And trying
is them to kind of like say, okay, we've got a multipolar world. We can do one too, just not the one that Russia and China wants to have. We'll do one where we pretend to do some multipolarity. We can do multipolarity as long as we get to be the hegemon. That's kind of mutually exclusive right there. No, shut up.
It's like it's the same thing, but with a different hat.
Yes. Sort of.
Yeah.
Which makes it different.
Yes.
Even though it's the same.
No, it's not the same. That's the thing.
No?
No. I mean, the same thing they did before.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
Did any of you look into this trial in the Netherlands, COVID vaccine trial?
No.
I think this is what RFK Jr. was touting when he was campaigning last summer. The media won't tell you, but Bill Gates has been named, and the trial will go ahead in the Netherlands. I can't get any media reports about it. Maybe there's some of the Dutch media. A trial did indeed open last week. A lawsuit, and those named are Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates, Albert Bourla, Mark Rutte, and a fifth person, I forget. Someone who is covering it or promising to cover it as it develops. I suppose the first point is a court is willing to hear it. You know, whether we'll go beyond a hearing, most likely not. But if you want to keep up to date with it, Jim Ferguson, he's a Scottish activist. He's been there in the Netherlands. He's not. I don't know if he's actually inside the courtroom, but he has been reporting about it. It's a bit squirrely what's going to happen there, because the head guy, a guy called Arno Kessel, who you've probably seen online because he's been a kind of like a high-profile Dutch lawyer about all things atrocious that were done in and around COVID. He was raided and arrested and is being held on remand since a few days before the trial opened, or the hearing opened. So people should, So Jim Ferguson has written a report just prior to it opening about the scope of the case and what it can and can't rule on. But it's to do with damages to the plaintiffs, a whole host of Dutch people, and maybe it's a couple hundred people from the COVID vaccines, specifically the mRNA ones. Worth noting, because it's the first such attempt that I'm aware of that's even been allowed to be heard anywhere in the West, I think. There were payouts in the UK for vaccine injuries. So people have been sort of given hush money, but this is about more. This is seeking criminal, not damages, but criminal convictions of people who are not going to be there in person, obviously. But RFK Jr. did say when he was talking about it that Gates will have to have representation. Anyway, it'd be nice if the media would, at least just mention that it's happening. It is ongoing. It's been a couple of days. I don't know if it's even going to get beyond a hearing stage, but for what it's worth.
Let's see. I have it from a Dutch source. The first civil case facilitated by the Recht Oprecht Foundation is legal proceeding before the court in Leeuwarden. 7 individuals with COVID-19 vaccine injury 17 defendants, including the state of the Netherlands, Mark Rutte, Bill Gates, Albert Bourla. Yeah, this seems interesting.
Yet there's not a single media report about it. In the Anglosphere, anyway.
Yeah, and the person who just sent that to me, is keeps up with the Dutch media, and this is the first that they're aware of it as well. So,
really?
Yeah.
Right. There you go.
So,
okay, you can have your court here, your day in court. So this is the other thing. Like, say Epstein actually gets to a real court investigation or trial or whatever, maybe of an associate like Sarah Kellen, who was one of his other pimps. Ghislaine Maxwell, there was that trial, right?
Yeah.
And then the media just pretends it doesn't happen.
Well, that's the thing. Where so many people are talking about how they want justice, they want names and all that stuff. Well, they're like they want people in jail. It's like, well, first of all, Epstein was in jail. Ghislaine Maxwell also in jail. There was a third person. I can't remember his name. I think he was French. He was also put in jail. He was, I think, the third in command of the
Brunel, maybe.
Possibly.
And then he died in jail, I think.
Died in jail
Suicide.
After like a year.
Yeah.
So there has been some actual sentencing. Some people have gone to prison for this. At the same time, and I didn't have time to pull them all up, but there has been quite a few basically like settlements where companies will pay the victims X number of $1 million and to shut it up.
Do you know why it's a company and not an individual? I've heard of that Deutsche Bank had a big payout to victims of Epstein. Why would Deutsche Bank be doing it on
behalf of? I don't know. That would have been
maybe
maybe
they were named in the suit or they're implicated.
Possibly, but they're not the only one. That was just that's one of quite a few. So in that sense, where there's restitution, there has been some justice. But the thing is that's not on the front page of anything. That's like the whole point of the settlement was to like hush it all up.
Yeah,
and so it's been hushed up, and no one's actually talking about it. But it is part of the whole thing where there actually has been things happen within the justice system, but it's just not talked about openly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. We're done.
Yeah. One last thing. As of today, there's still 0 people who've been convicted of defamation
in
France
what suit?
Or anywhere else for claiming that Brigitte Macron is in fact a transgender man.
Mm-hmm.
The 2 journalists that we hear over and over and over were done for defamation. Their convictions were overturned last week on appeal.
Yep. Judge said that their statements about Brigitte being a man were made in good faith.
Yes. The court, of course, didn't weigh in on the issue.
And it was protected by free speech.
I heard that Brigitte is going to go for taking it to the French Supreme Court.
She'll be in trouble.
It's
not going to end well.
Appeal it.
She's in one of those situations where she's damned if she does and damned if she doesn't,
Or
that's what you get when it be a lie, Or he, it, whatever. Anyway, yeah, we done? Okay. Man walks into a bar and says,
"Ow,
that's going to hurt." So we'll leave it there for this week, folks. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back next week with another show on whatever bullshit's been going on between now and then. So until then, have a good one. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Can't stop the signal now.